us every week at this time. Steve Laffey, longtime friend of the radio show, and now he's here with us on the, what do we call the screencast? I've dubbed the word as a screencast, not a podcast. Steve Laffey, good morning to you, sir.
Jimmy, great show. I did watch a little Mr. Mullen yesterday, give him hell, so good for him. But yeah, anything where you want to go, it is amazing how we've elected total clowns from Keynes to Wall. I mean, state by state, and in California, maybe especially, where hopefully those things will change now.
It really is bizarre, and they sit there, they lecture Hegseth, who's actually been willing to lay his life down for his country. You would think they're more qualified defense secretary. That's fine. But to go after him personally as if they're self-righteous on the throne of God, doing that, just some of these attacks get so nasty and personal. I know politics is nasty, but you realize we didn't elect statesmen or stateswomen. We've elected some clowns in some of these states because that was not statesman-like intellectual argument. That was just nagging, screaming, and it was no good.
Yeah, how about Mr. Hegseth? How many submarines should we build a year in the Trident class? Mr. Hegseth, how many people do we actually need in the military, in each division, and how many tanks do we need? And I don't know. Just ask some questions that make some sense. But the thing is, among especially the Democratic members of the United States Senate, they don't care or know the answers. They wouldn't say, no, I disagree. We need 3, and I think we need 3, not 2 new nuclear, myself, right? So they don't know the answer, nor they care about the answer. And that's really the problem in America today. It's really the problem. It's a giant problem.
And you kind of get what you vote for. Old Barack Obama was famous for saying elections have consequences. And, it's kind of soon, but you look at the disaster that's happening in California with the fires, and people call a fire an act of God. But a lot of this and the damage that's done was an act of human stupidity by Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom, and you criticize them, but the people of California elected them.
Yeah, and I really pray, and I think this may be like a defining moment for California, because they elected the fire chief or appointed the fire chief of the county or whatever, who is way overweight, has no idea what's going on, and doesn't have any pumps ready. 2, they've reelected a governor who refuses, along with the state legislature, to take all the extra water when it rains and put it into giant reservoirs everywhere around the state. They could have done that. They could do that. They won't do that. And so people not even growing trees anymore, right? So because they got to protect one fish somewhere. Who knows what their rationale really is, right? And then you take right now in Los Angeles, there are men who have stayed behind to protect condos and defend, sending their wives off. And you got people now carrying guns in neighborhoods, protecting the homes that haven't burned or have burned from looters. If this was Mississippi, if you remember the flood in Mississippi where the governor, this is 10, 20 years ago, said, just remember, we shoot looters. In Mississippi, they didn't have any looters.
Yeah.
The governor said, we shoot looters. Just remember, as the whole thing was breaking down in Mississippi with a flood, in a conservative state, that was the message. So when you hear that message, do you show up to get shot? No. And so hopefully this is the defining moment for California, where they say we elected a bunch of losers, and that even people who are the massive media left-wing people whose houses have burned down unnecessarily say, we've got to change. We finally have to change. And at least California could be a purple state. The guy who lost the mayor of Los Angeles was like out of town, didn't come back, doesn't have anything to say, whereas the person who actually knows what he's doing is out there actually trying to help fight fires, who lost the race. A real estate guy whose real estate buildings don't burn down because he puts in private fire. So now maybe people are seeing this saying, listen, that guy's prepared. Let's get him. Yeah. Maybe.
The government's, we have this mentality that the government's going to save us. The government's going to bail us out, and we see how that works here in this time, and it's not necessarily the truth. And it's just amazing to me, and I want to talk about some other topics that you've sent over, but it's amazing to me that we have this, and I know it's a massive fire and massive damage in California, but only last week that I realized people in North Carolina are still living in tents because they have not had help from the government, and FEMA hasn't come through. They're still living in tents in North Carolina after Hurricane Helene.
Yeah. And for example, you and I talked about this like 10 years ago and maybe 5 years ago twice. Let me just bring it up again. If I were president, we would have Walmart and other large companies like Home Depot put bottles of giant amount of water, all these things in 7, 8 different locations in America. And as these expiration dates came, even on water or tools, they'd be going out to the public and would replace them. So when a disaster happened, immediately trucks, whatever's needed is there in 7 locations and goes to these places, temporary homes, single wide. We'd have Clayton Homes build us some more single wide and have them sitting there so they could go to places that's needed for people who are serving, people who need them. None of that has ever happened. Not under Donald Trump, not under Obama, not under Bush. We are ill prepared for any disaster, and we have never hardened, our systems for electricity and so forth in this country. And we are ill prepared for anything that's happening. And when it happens, it just happens, and people don't have a place to live, and FEMA doesn't have a place to put people to go fight fires. We are just the most ill-prepared country of the richest country by far.
Yeah. If you're just listening to the audio of this show, I know some of you put the headphones on and just kind of listen to it while you're at work, and that's good. That's the voice of Steve Laffey. His website, stevelaffey.com. Steve, let's switch over a little bit. Obviously, Monday's the inauguration day. And one of the top stories that has been, I guess, kind of an albatross around America for the last couple of years in the national scene is what's going to happen between Ukraine and Russia. But Donald Trump said he thinks he's going to be able to get some kind of a settlement here with Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. Talk about this. Putin says he's going to have some demands if he's going to talk to Donald Trump. Give me your thoughts here.
Well, Putin put out his demands that he keeps 20% of the land, and they never join NATO, and they have limited military and all this kind of stuff. It's like a non-starter for Trump, I think. So Trump, as he says in the campaign, I'm going to settle it in 24 hours. It won't be settled in a long time because Putin, just so you know how Russians act. When Trump said he could do these kind of things and he had a conversation with Putin from Mar-a-Lago, the next day, the national news, one channel, I guess, in Russia, put up naked pictures on the news of his wife, nude photos of Melania on TV, and everybody laughed. So Putin is basically telling Trump to stick it, and Trump won't react that well because Zelensky's actually saying, hey, whatever you need to do, we're ready to talk and negotiate and so forth, which is smart by him, right? And he met up with, I'll be at, by the way, during the inauguration, I'll be at Notre Dame in France. I'll be in France. And so I'll go where Trump and Zelensky met a couple of weeks ago. But it's just silly stuff. And it brings you back to the point of whether it's the DOGE people who are going to cut $2 trillion out of the budget when we only collect $4.4 trillion, and they weren't including Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and so forth. So now they're down to like a couple $100 billion, I think. And so the question for everybody is, do you pay attention? Are you listening at all? Do you hear these things and say, well, people just say that I'm still voting for so-and-so? I guess the answer is yes. Like no one seems to know what I'm talking about. People listen to the show do, but the average person has no idea what we're talking about as the deficit overwhelms the United States of America slowly but surely even today. They're just not paying attention.
It's very similar to what we're just talking about in the leadoff here. You watch these senators, and you can't be from the state of Illinois or the state of Massachusetts and going, wow, we have the most intellectually astute person ever. People just don't pay attention. I think a lot of people in Illinois, even people that may be Democrats, would be horrified that that's how Duckworth represents them. And it's buffoonery, and we don't seem to mind the buffoonery. And we don't seem to mind the fact that our taxes are really high for many people, right? That you're right now paying into Social Security that you're 40 years old and you're never going to get it. It's about to go bankrupt. And you're just like, well, just keep paying into it. I won't say anything to my parents. I won't say anything. I won't vote that way. I won't vote to fix it. And the roads are terrible. Even think about it. You're in Colorado. I'm in Colorado. People listening all over the world. Colorado is a rich state. It's one of the richest states. In fact, its budget revenue goes up so much that there's an argument about, the Constitution, they send money back to us, right? But they argue about it because the Democrats don't want to send the money back. It's so rich in oil, and yet the highway of Route 25, the main highway, is one of the worst things you could ever drive on. Still. and it must be that someone's getting paid off and nobody cares. And even in a wealthy city that I live in
in Fort Collins, when it snows, they refuse to plow the roads. They don't do it. They won't put down, they put down like Beetlejuice and hope it works on the main roads, and everything, they just wait for the sun to come back. But if it doesn't come back in the wealthiest part of the state, Fort Collins, maybe Boulder, right? They refuse to plow the roads. Everybody's okay with it. At the city council level, they just elect the same people. Yeah, but and then, yet they're sliding all over the place and whack. I watch it out here. They whack their cars and they're fine.
It really is bizarre. And I always try, now that we've kind of have this new platform and we're being national, I always like to tell the Colorado stories, and you're vouching everything you guys say, because in 2 years, Jared Polis is going to attempt to run for governor. Our Senator Michael Bennett ran, John Hickenlooper ran. Now Jared Polis, who's a rich cat, he's going to try to run. And he's going to try to portray himself as some moderate. And my friends, you have to listen to Steve Laffey and I. He's been a horrible governor.
It's so terrible.
I mean, he's been an awful, awful governor, and there's nothing libertarian or moderate about him. He's an awful, awful guy. It really, really is.
Within like a stone's throw of the Capitol, so people outside know, of Denver, like 4 people were stabbed on the 16th Street Mall last week, and 1 died. They're just, you're walking down, there's a walking mall, just so people know they've never been. I never go there. I won't go there. I don't go to Denver. I won't go. I don't step over homeless people. I just don't give them money. But people go and they get stabbed at 5 p.m. walking down a walking mall, which everybody should be having fun, holding their kids' hands, gapping on the trolley. Instead, they're getting stabbed because they won't do anything about the people who are stabbing people.
Yeah, the guy that did the stabbing had a rap sheet. He had been released because we can't be mean to violent criminals, and we had to let him back out on the streets. This is the justice system of Colorado, and Jared Polis, he's an absolute positively disaster. Steve, I just got this note yesterday from a friend, and this is a kind of a diversion, talking about the sickness of our state. And this is the craziness of them. There's my friend who's a former professor at a local university said that it's a law in 2023, there was a law that where we wanted to become like the abortion Disneyland. We wanted to become like an abortion tourist state. We have some of those liberal, open laws for abortion at all. And the law that was signed by Governor Jared Polis, I didn't realize this. If you're going to do a chemical abortion, they inject a drug. And within a certain time, if you don't reverse it, it will take effect and kill the baby. But it is illegal. If a lady is in that process, it's illegal. It's in the law. And I've got the magazine article here. That's how radical our laws are. If a lady is in the process with an abortion and she says, I changed my mind, can we stop now? It is illegal for the doctor to give her the reversal dose of progesterone. It is illegal for him to stop it, even if she wants to.
Yeah. It just, you know, it is so sick and so sad that the culture of death, whether it's California or Colorado, is now running so rampant. You know, these people don't even realize, the liberal people who do this, that even on a secular basis, you would not be for abortion because you don't want them to come after you. If we protect every life very young and very old and people with Down syndrome and mentally ill from being exterminated, then it's, just listen to me, folks, on this. It's less likely that they come for you, right? But they don't think that way. They think about dehumanizing all humans. And then they think that this is the whole argument of women, these crazy women people. It's my body. Well, it's your body, but there's someone renting a space inside there. It's alive. It's breathing. What are you talking about? At least say it like Clinton used to say. It should be rare, right? These people don't say that. They say do it every day. They want that. That's their version of of women's rights. Except there's a person inside. I mean, Dr. Zeus. How many Dr. Zeus stories do you have to read? A person's a person, no matter how small. I mean, you learn this as a kid, and I didn't even get into to religion, which I'm very religious, right? So. But just to protect yourself, folks, be anti-abortion.
Let me ask you real quick as we head towards our end of our time. Tonight, Joe Biden is going to give a speech, his farewell address. He's released a farewell letter. And again, he's living in a delusional world that he's created 16.6 million jobs. Most of those are just reestablishing the economy after COVID. He also says he took over right after the greatest attack on our democracy since the Civil War, talking about January the 6th. I guess he forgot about Pearl Harbor, 9/11. It's a delusional letter.
Yeah.
Give me your review of Joe Biden, thoughts on his speech tonight. I think he will be judged, if not already, if history will judge him as one of those feckless and inefficient governors in modern history. Your thoughts on the farewell address in the final days of Joe Biden?
Yeah, good riddance. Don't slap your door on the head on the way out, you idiot. You're the worst president ever. You topped Obama. You got people out of Afghanistan. A 12-year-old would have done a better job. First, should have left, but even leaving, literally a 12-year-old. Now, the invasion of Ukraine, you did nothing about. You could have stopped it the way Trump it would not have happened under Trump. Putin would have waited. So go on, just the whole thing, and then the ultimate thing of first of all, you're the person, Mr. Biden, who disregarded every Supreme Court ruling against you about student debt. It didn't matter. You just kept doing it and then getting it thrown out because you were placating this many people instead of protecting the general interest of America. Your woke policies on the military have destroyed the ability of young people to say, I'm going in, especially in the South. Parents who had generations in the South, where most of our military fighting forces come from, is from Alabama, right? And I'm being hyperbolic, but they come from Alabama. And the fathers are now like, no, we're not doing that. You did that, Mr. Biden. You did it in spades. And then the last part, where you decided to pardon your son, who's guilty as hell, to throw a middle finger, after all you said about Trump's pardons, which were terrible, you threw a middle finger up to the executive privilege that you have and pardoned your son, who is the most guilty person who should be in jail for years. You did it so that people now disrespect the presidency of the United States in the most important way. They don't trust it. You've taken down democracy, Mr. Biden. Leave now, and forever. We hope we never see you again. And here's the other part about Biden and his wife and his family. They are so selfish that after he was elected as a place card holder, he should have announced that day, as I said on your show, that he wasn't running again. I said he was 100% chance that he would never be reelected, never run. I was right. It took an extra 2 months talking to you. And right, I said by March, I might be wrong, but I'm 100% correct on this. And I was, because you were too darn old and you put all of us at risk because you couldn't handle it. You're mentally incompetent, and your wife is the most selfish lady who ever stepped into the first lady job in the history of America. Goodbye.
Yeah. I think when you look at the Biden family, when the history book is told, you will find that selfishness there that, they didn't pull the old guy aside and say, hey, Pops, it's kind of time to hang it up. You're slipping there a little bit. I've got a story that even some staffers said it just got worse and worse from the day one. And it was obvious to all of us. And this is, I don't know if the media learns anything, but the media got exposed for their covering up of the whole thing. They said he was fine. So the lessons learned in the Biden presidency will be interesting to see if there are any learned. But
picking only a black woman to be the vice president left him with a complete incompetent for 4 years, right? Who wouldn't go to the border, put her in charge of the border, and she couldn't win, right? Because a lot of people could have beat Donald Trump. So in history, he destroyed himself. He'll go down in the very below Franklin Pierce, below Van Buren, like people you don't even remember. He'll be the worst. And they will throw him under the bus in the history books. And all he had to do was serve a couple of years and appoint someone normal. Like, as I said, the astronaut, right? Like an astronaut, or the governor of Pennsylvania, somebody who was normal. The governor of Kentucky. Somebody normal could have been vice president, and then someone normal could have replaced him, and they would have got rid of Kamala Harris if they had a chance. They didn't have a tough time, and they would have won.
I think that's the key question. We'll wrap it up here, but the key question is, will the Democrats return to normal? Because I started the show showing these senators, these lady senators, they're not normal women. Those are not normal ladies. They're crazed. Gavin Newsom is slick and smarmy as he seems to be. They're not normal people, and as much as you like Trump or don't like Trump, he at least comes across kind of normal. I mean, he works at McDonald's when he needs to, drives a garbage truck, has a sense of humor. Will the Democrats learn anything and become normal again? Because Democrats, the leadership is not normal. I mean, Chuck Schumer's not a normal guy. Nancy Pelosi's not a normal woman. No,
Chuck Schumer, I've met Chuck Schumer, and you walk away from a meeting with him like going to find a shower, because he is really a bad guy, and he's the guy in charge for them. So I don't know if they can or not. But Gavin Newsom's done forever. The fires did him in, and they did in the mayor of Los Angeles, and that will happen, continue to happen if they keep doing this.
One more thing, you talk about the fires and tying all this together. Joe Biden said he would appoint the first African-American black woman in the Supreme Court, which he did, which is an insult to the lady. Hey, we're only appointing you because you're black and you're the smartest black woman we could find. I've been smarter men. Ketanji Brown Jackson. He said he'd appoint a woman, but he couldn't put Amy Klobuchar in because she had some pro-police laws that she had supported. So then he goes to, well, I'll get a woman of color. And no joke, as Joe Biden would say, his two choices on the short list were Kamala Harris, who we know who she is, and Karen Bass, who's now the mayor of Los Angeles. Those were the two ladies he actually considered to be his VP. I mean, you think Kamala Harris was a bad VP. Imagine if we would have gotten stuck with Mayor Karen Bass as a VP.
Yeah, makes Lyndon Johnson look like a giant in history.
Hey, Laffey, safe travels. Are you going to check in with us?
I'm going to check in from Paris and then from Athens. It'll work on the phone. And so let's try it. I'll be the roving reporter, see how they react.
I did this whole show from Rwanda a couple of weeks ago, so the technology you have is great. So I think it'll work out great. There's a little app and all that stuff. There's a little link is always the same. I'll make sure you're hooked up on it.
I got it hooked up on my phone. We'll do it. I love you.
Yeah. God bless you. Love you, my friend.
God bless.
And happy travels and safe travels to you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good to have you here on the show. A lot of a good conversation with Steve Laffey. And he's right.
Anyway, yep, I'm heading off.